talk about doing some things that make you uncomfortable. Google, of course, has its own style. I think this is a good chance for you to get a feel for our version of what an ecosystem should look like. And an ecosystem we're going to be talking about today is about how we work together, how we help one another. When I think about sort of my own career, so as Andrew introduced me, I'm responsible for, I'm the global channel chief for Google Cloud. It's a great gig, but it all started for me back, I actually started my career at VAR many, many years ago, probably more than I would like to admit most days, and went on from there to do a variety of roles from the first VP of channels at PeopleSoft many years ago. And at that point in time, we're going to talk a little bit about MSP here as well. At that point in time, it was called application service providers, and it was much more about sort of hosting environments. And then on to Deloitte, so I have worked at a global SI in the services side of the business, to SAP, to GE Digital, and of course to Google. So it's been a diverse career in which I have sat in a number of seats and different roles along the way. And so I'll be talking a little bit about what that ecosystem looks like and about the change that's going on. And I think the one thing that I think is more true now than ever is the need for a diverse set of an ecosystem overall. I'm going to be talking mainly about three things today. One is the cloud is now. And now is really the time to get involved and engaged around it. I think the way in which we think about a traditional partner ecosystem is changing. And then I'll talk a little bit about how some of the partners that we're working with are really successfully navigating that change, and most importantly, driving value for our customers. So I'm going to start with taking a little bit of a walk down memory lane here. So when I think about sort of change in the environment, some of you were around as I was, where it was in the 1990s, and it was like, don't get into a stranger's car. That progressed as the years passed, like don't meet people on the internet. And then fast forward to thinking about 2014, where we have Uber doing a public IPO, whose entire premise is the volume of people who are calling people on the internet, strangers, to come pick them up in their car. And when I think about that transformation, I saw that reflected in my own family. Maybe a month ago, I had to travel on a Sunday. And in an unusual move for my family, my husband and son decided to ride with me to take me to the airport to get a little more time with me. So we were driving in the car. My son is 10. I was talking to him saying, hey, thank you so much. This is so great to get a little more time with you guys. I was like, back in the old days, before you were born, your dad actually used to drop me off and pick me up at the airport all the time. This is a special occasion now, but it was really great. And my son turns to me and he said, Mom, why didn't you just use an Uber? And I was like, Clayton, Uber didn't exist then. And he's like, oh, well, what about Lyft? And I was like, that didn't exist either, Clayton. And he's like, wow, you guys weren't very advanced, were you? And so I think about that to just reflect on sort of my son, who is just 10 years old, who literally doesn't know an environment in which we have a ride-sharing company, right, that says they're not about transport, they're a technology company, and how quickly that has changed entirely. And that really represents both the challenge and the opportunity for all of us. Gartner talks about this when they talk about sort of what is the most disruptive force that's going on in the market today, and that really being around cloud. The way in which business as we know it has changed, I can think, again, many of you are road warriors as I am. Imagine any number of years ago going to London, right? You'll get off the plane, Heathrow or Gatwick, you're in a rush, you don't have time to change money. You go up to one of the iconic black cabs and you start looking for someone who is actually going to take a credit card. And it is a challenge, right? You open the door, will you take a credit card? No. Okay, next one, will you take a credit card? No, next one. And then I can think to now about what a difference it is. And obviously we saw the tremendous upheaval that they had around the ride-sharing economy over in London. And as that black cab business got disrupted, now when you go to Heathrow, there isn't a black cab that doesn't take a credit card, and in fact, they have their own app. And that was a business that was getting dramatically disrupted, right? And there were some moves that obviously were made by the government to help sort of maintain their business in the face of that dramatic disruption. But these are the kinds of changes that are going on all over. Cloud is both driving enormous business value and creating tremendous disruption for some sets of businesses. And every enterprise out there has been or will be in some way disrupted by changes that are going to get unlocked by the cloud. The vast majority of these are in the still will be, and that really represents the collective opportunity for all of us in terms of what's untapped in that market. So when I think about where that market is at and we look at what some of the data is, we can see today that roughly they say 20% of the workloads in the world are running in the cloud. So that says we're only 1/5 of the way there. That means there's a tremendous, tremendous TAM still sitting out there. It's continuing to grow very, very rapidly. We also know that according to Gartner, public services, right, like what Google has offered, will be essential for 90% of that business innovation that's going to come out. And that's really what customers are looking to understand is how do I better navigate that tremendous change? What can I unlock in terms of an opportunity? And then by 2025, the world's data is going to be roughly 5 times bigger than it is now. So Google has a pretty unique perspective on what that growth of data is and can be. I finally work somewhere where my son knows what it is. He was all excited. I've heard of Google, Mom, when I started. And one of the reasons is that there are actually 10 apps in the world today that have more than 1 billion users. 9 of them come from Google. So when you think whether it's YouTube, Gmail, Drive, Android, Maps, many of you may have used that to come over and so on. What you're working with Google are experts who have scaled to massive scale again and again, repeatedly. And so what does all this growth mean for you? It means you need to understand how you can take advantage of that transition in the market so you, in fact, are not disrupted, and in fact, you're part of the creative force with your customers that is unlocking that opportunity for them. It's really going to require an ecosystem, which is some of what we'll be talking about here, which will mean different roles, different blends of roles, ways in which you may partner together today that you didn't before to build the partnerships to deliver for those customers. So when we say cloud, people think of a lot of different things. Some of you may think of an app on the phone. Maybe you're using SAP Concur to enter your expenses. For other companies, they are from start to finish a digital native. We already talked about ride sharing, or you can think of Airbnb, right, of entire new economies that have been built from the ground up that are digital natives. And then many other businesses, when they think of cloud, are thinking of, I've got some on-prem environment, I have my own private cloud that I'm engaged with, and then I may be venturing off into a public cloud environment. So most organizations are finding that it is somewhere in that middle of I'm straddling a number of things is where I'm at, and how do I do that best? So the cloud can look very different from industry to industry as well. What someone is doing in retail is very different from what someone is doing in the medical field today. Most companies are looking at some form of a multi-cloud strategy, where they will work with multiple providers. So when they are thinking about that, one way or another, they're going to need a different set of collaboration, right? So they're going to grapple with a historical on-prem if they're a traditional business, understanding if there's any reason for them to explore a private cloud now, or if it makes the most sense to move to public. And all of this is super meaningful for you here in the room because it means they are looking for someone to guide them amongst that. And there's been lots of conversations you heard me say when I started my career at Avar, of sort of, what kinds of businesses are dying and what will survive. I'm completely convinced that actually there's an even broader opportunity now than there has been before, and it is really around the complexity that folks have to navigate. So the importance becomes, how do you make sure you're building that cloud expertise now in order to be able to really keep up and thrive in an environment that's changing so rapidly? So what does a successful ecosystem look like? I think here's a historical sort of picture of what things had looked like. What you see here is a pretty traditional ecosystem where there's many point-to-point relationships with the customer at the center. And the customer might have worked with a variety of different partners or vendors that reflect different sort of domain areas. And each of them having their own role And this worked. A customer could pick a single provider to deliver one or solve one particular problem. Now when you think about the cloud, it becomes very, very difficult to have all of these components, right, thought of in a separate way for someone who is looking to navigate this journey. So the next view of what this looks like is a much messier, more complex ecosystem. And you'll see here I've reflected it as sort of a subway map, but where there's lots of different types of partners, where there is a customer who is looking to navigate that, by the way, is starting wherever they're starting. And you've probably run into those customers, some of which who may be very, very historical, sort of on-prem businesses, and are looking to make sure, what does it mean for me? I don't even understand what the cloud is, to more sophisticated companies. But all of them are planning, they understand, they're trying to identify where am I now? Where do I want to go? What's the end stop? And what are all the stops that I need to make along the way to effectively navigate this new environment? And so there are more and more ways to solve problems. There's more and more opportunities for you to drive value. But the challenge is this complexity. So the element that you have to meet a customer where they are and to help them navigate what the cloud journey is going to look like for them is super important. And how do they harness all this mix of folks, my own company included, to say the most important thing for me is to show more differentiation for my company. So Google has probably a more unique perspective on this as someone who is a public cloud provider. It's really driven off of a perspective that we need to be customer-centric. And so we talked earlier about sort of what the mix looks like overall. So we believe customers are looking to avoid vendor lock-in, that they're looking for a variety of solutions that are out there in the market. Google has repeatedly been an innovator around openness. You can look at things like Kubernetes, which was originated within Google and is now one of the most widely developed references that you'll see of containerization that's out there. You can think of TensorFlow. There are a number of innovations that Google has brought and pushed into the open source community. And that is really a reflection of this intent to be open and also drive innovation. So the latest thing that we've talked about is our release of Anthos, which is a method for a customer to engage with multiple cloud environments, an on-prem environment, and a private cloud environment, potentially, if that's what they choose, and to say, how do I manage with one management layer across all of those, build an application once, and deploy it across multiple clouds? And that becomes very, very important as you think about what they're trying to do, which is really around how do I deliver more innovation to my end customers? It's not how do I navigate multiple environments and I get zero value out of refactoring some app to run across multiple environments. And so I will talk a little bit more about how we want to help folks deliver a single management enterprise and sort of interface to customers, and talk a little bit more about this multi-cloud trend. So roughly 86% of customers who are out there talk about having a multi-cloud strategy. So again, this represents a tremendous opportunity for you and is probably, again, a little bit surprising to hear from a scaled public vendor cloud vendor as Google is. But it's really about this customer centricity and helping the customers to navigate what is the right path for them, how can they do that most efficiently. And so this really aligns with where Google has been at. You heard me reference sort of our developments from a Kubernetes perspective or from TensorFlow of saying our goal is really to drive innovation out to the end customer, and then we will build innovation on top of that. So another example when I think about this is this element of the way in which you can design an application once and run it across multiple environments overall. So if you think about a customer, we have a great example with KeyBank that is a customer of ours. So banks, of course, have particular regulations that they have to follow. They have a blended environment and probably will have a blended environment for an extended period of time. And they've also indicated that it's very important for them not to be locked into one particular cloud, but feeling like public cloud is really enterprise ready for them. Anthos is one of the reasons they in particular came to Google. And so it was really around saying, hey, look, we think we're enterprise ready. We want to move our data lake. There's a lot of analysis that they want to do. When you think about the banking industry overall and the challenges around fraud, period, is a huge opportunity for them. There's a lot of information that you can get out of data mining and effectively using AI and ML that Google does uniquely well. So they are moving in, recognizing the value of a hybrid cloud approach that will incorporate their on-prem environment, allow them to leverage that data, leave that data where it is, and also leverage some of the innovation that Google can bring to them in our cloud. So I think this openness in playing with multiple cloud providers is one of the reasons we're seeing enterprises move towards us. So bringing this back to you as someone who's looking to serve customers, I think the other thing is talking about the ecosystem of partners that actually sort of plan and execute these strategies. The cloud has really allowed many startups, as we've talked about earlier in the presentation, to scale established businesses, right, without requiring inventory, do things that have never been done before, and create billion-dollar valuations in the market overall. It allows them to scale at enormous speed. Google places tremendous value on democratizing data. One of the things that we think about when we're in Google Cloud is really the way in which a business with a creative idea can begin to unlock incredible computing power on an as-needed basis without having to pay for all of that infrastructure up front. So this ability to scale fast within cloud also can apply to all of you. I already mentioned the need for partners to really begin building their cloud businesses and services, but I think as we think about that demand, we are seeing partners ramp and scale in a massive and similar way. Overall, to give you sort of a rough fill, when I think about, so part of how we would measure our business around Google Cloud Platform is the increase in consumption that's going on in the market through our partners. So the average performance of increasing consumption year over year was more than 200%. That's the average across our partner portfolio, so there are many that are growing far in excess of that. And the pipeline build is at over 400% year over year. So what you're seeing, one, in the entire pool of partner portfolio who are engaged in this kind of space is massive growth that's really reflected of that earlier comment that I made about the TAM that's out there and the amount of TAM that is yet to be unlocked. So we're still in early days. I can think specifically a great example of really to take us out of this geography and venture afield over in Asia Pac. One of our partners is a great example, a company named Bespin Global. So Bespin is a managed service provider that started in Korea in 2015. They've grown to 8 times their size in that period of time. They've appeared in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for 3 years running from just a start in 2015 around that space. They have more than 700 enterprise customers. They represent actually a really unique blend of sort of enterprise companies and digital natives overall. So even digital natives who are deriving value from someone being able to deliver managed services, and a bunch of that is around this opportunity of how do you navigate value in a multi-cloud environment? What are the places where you can best unlock the unique pieces of technology that someone like Google can bring? And that's tremendous, tremendous growth when you think about just since 2015. Obviously, I gave the example of Uber's IPO, but this is even more rapid than that in terms of a partner from inception, right, growing to roughly $1 billion valuation. So this is tremendous, tremendous growth that's going on in that environment, and someone like that who is now competing with the likes of Accenture's, CAP, HCL for bids out in that region. And again, many of us are navigating EMEA or the US region, which are significantly larger overall than even Korea. So it really shows you the size and scale that someone can grow. So what I really want you to take away from this is the idea that the cloud allows for very rapid growth, not just for your customers, not just for unlocking innovation for your customers, but really in the opportunity for you as partners and for you to rethink who you might partner with. When you think about the blend of experience and expertise that your customers may want, you have the history that you bring to that customer, your knowledge of their existing footprint, the base, the relationships that you've built over time, and then understanding who are the right mix, where are those lines blurring for your customers now, how might some of you partner together even in the room to create something new and an opportunity overall. This is not just a dream. We can see this again and again in our partner environment with the growth to say this is really an achievable goal. So, to recap, if you aren't already growing this expertise, I would just say in the space overall, the time to start is clearly now. The market is accelerating quickly. I know Andrew opened with a surfing analogy, but it is very much there is a moment in time in which you have to catch the wave or you're riding behind it. And so now is really the time for you to take a chance and unlock the opportunity within cloud if you're not engaged already, or to really rethink how you can double down and how you can expand the opportunity for your customers to really unlock incremental value. So Google has some of the strongest partners that are in the world. We're super grateful for those of you who are already our partners that are out here in the audience. If things like being able to execute at sort of a global scale quickly and rapidly are important to you, driving innovation, and if customer success is a priority, we're a place where you should look. I also just really, again, want to thank all of you for the time. Up here you can see, feel free to reach out to me. You can always find me on Twitter and the cloud too. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with some of you and appreciate your time. Thank you.